Welcome, dear viewers, to the New Indian Express special episode on the Tibetan spiritual leader, His Holiness the Dalai Lama's 90th birthday on July 6th. This whole year, from July 6th till next year, is being observed as the year of compassion. On the eve of his birthday, His Holiness is likely to make an important announcement, and it is highly anticipated. And perhaps he would speak on his reincarnation or his successor. With us here today, we have the Sikyong, the elected leader of the Central Tibetan Administration, Mr. Penpa Tsering. Welcome, sir. It's a privilege to have you here with us. Can you please elaborate on the preparations of the Koton, the 90th birthday celebrations of the Dalai Lama?
Now, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama is turning 90 on July 6th. And as preceding the official July 6th program, we have on July 5th a long life ceremony offered by all the Tibetans inside and outside Tibet for the long life of His Holiness. And from 2nd to 4th of July, we have this conference of all the Tibetan Buddhist religious traditions, including the pre-Buddhist religion, Pon, of more than 120 members represented there, and most of the head of the traditions coming, and wherever they are not able to come, they have decided to send their representatives. So this will be a 3-day program. Of course, there are a lot of speculation about what His Holiness is going to say before or on His Holiness' birthday, because the only document that is available on His Holiness' reincarnation. I think people alternatively use succession or successor or reincarnation, but I would rather prefer we use the same word, reincarnation. So again, I don't want to be misquoted, because this leads to many more questions coming from many other media outlets. So let us make this very clear that there is only one document on His Holiness reincarnation that is dated September 2011, in which His Holiness says that when he reaches the age of 90, which is now few weeks, 2 weeks now away from now, then he would consult and make some announcements. So that is what everybody is waiting. The whole international media, everybody wants to know what His Holiness has to say. So whatever His Holiness is going to say regarding his reincarnation, His Holiness will send a video message to the conference on July 2nd. And the same transcript will be available in different languages to the media. So I'm not privy to the contents of what His Holiness is going to say. So does that inform you?
Yes, kind of. And by what he said in 2011, when he relinquished the post as a political leader and said that, established the CTA, saying that this would be democratically elected leader, he also said that his reincarnation would be born in a free world, and it could be a male or a female, but he stressed upon the fact that the person would be born in a free world. So in that, do we anticipate that this could be from India?
Now, from our perspective, it's still a long way off, because His Holiness keeps reassuring us that he will live for another 2 decades or more. So if we still have 2 more decades, then it's too early to talk about all these things. But still, the reason why His Holiness says he will be born in a free world is because the Chinese government keeps insisting that they will look for the 15th Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama's reincarnation in China or in Tibet. So, which restricts the geographical boundary, of course. Then no other actors will have any role in the selection of the next Dalai Lama. And Chinese communist government, who does not believe in any religion and forget about believing in life after death, which needs to be understood if you have to understand the concept of reincarnation. So that is the reason why His Holiness kept repeating that he will be born in a free world. Because even in one of the special meetings for the Tibetans, I remember His Holiness saying, if I have the opportunity to go to China and Tibet, I will go, but I will not stay there because there is no freedom there. And the whole idea of reincarnation is for the same soul to be reborn, to carry out the remaining activities of the previous Lama. And these Lamas who have the capacity to be reincarnated also should be spiritually attained. It just cannot be decided by any ordinary person. So it should be the person himself or herself generally to decide where he or she should be born to serve humanity. And if the person where he or she is born and is not able to carry out the previous life's activities, then it doesn't serve the purpose of reincarnation. Therefore, this is an answer to China's position that they will look for the next Dalai Lama.
15 Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
But sir, then you have very rightly explained it, and the fact that the Dalai Lama in 2011 also said, I mean, in his own way, he said he would consult the Buddhist leaders of the four groups and also other Himalayan leaders, whether they would like to have another Dalai Lama. Am I right? Did he infer to that? Did he say that he would take the opinion of everybody?
No, one thing that has been very consistent in His Holiness statements throughout this year since 1969 is that whether there should be a next Dalai Lama or not will be decided by the Tibetan people.
That's right.
So over the years, of course, the Tibetans inside Tibet cannot express themselves freely. So it's only the Tibetans in the diaspora community who can express themselves freely. So, of course, every Tibetan in the diaspora community and through other means of getting information from inside Tibet, everybody wants His Holiness reincarnation. And this is something that the CTA has also been, the Central Tibetan Administration has also been doing to collect statements, resolutions from Tibetan communities worldwide. So it is now given as understood that the Tibetan people wants the reincarnation of the 14th. So this will be presented to His Holiness, and whatever His Holiness decides after that, we'll have to see.
Going by what His Holiness said that he would live for another 2 decades, I think then that gives you a time that the reincarnation may be a baby and, gives how the process has been earlier. Am I right? Is that what?
No, there are several concepts being thrown about and being speculated over by the media. So reincarnation is looking for another soul boy after the demise of the present one. So then there is also this concept of emanation. If you talk about emanation, then maybe it is more akin to succession, because you are appointing somebody before your demise to take your responsibility with the blessings of the present living Lama. So that is another concept. And then, of course, there were other speculations as to whether the next Dalai Lama would be a woman or not. So all those have been thrown in, and it's quite a complex issue, because we have a pre-Buddhist religion called Pon. We have these 4 major traditions plus Chonang. Every tradition has the head lamas. Some are hereditary. Some are, reincarnation. So there are many levels of understanding the situation. It's not possible to explain in few minutes.
On this question of looking for the reincarnation, in the previous Dalai Lamas, it was the Panchen Lama who would help in identifying the reincarnation, but the Panchen Lama, unfortunately, has been the longest political prisoner. So is there any concern on that issue?
Of course, there is this spiritual tradition of what things needs to be followed when you look for reincarnation. Not every story is the same. Since the concept of reincarnation got introduced in Tibet some 950 years ago, it has been evolving. With every tradition, there is a different thing. It's not necessary that you always have a Dalai Lama to recognize the Panchen Lama, or a Panchen Lama to recognize the Dalai Lama. There could be cases where both are of the same age, or, there could be so many variations to situations that can happen. So for every different situation, things evolve, but fundamentally they follow the same traditional methods of forming select committees, having visions, the young child going through tests to verify whether the young child has chosen the right objects used by the previous Lama. So all those, there are so many aspects to all this. So what Chinese government is saying is that that they should use the golden urn, and we have and people who don't know about this is something that the Ming Chinese, the Manchus, the Qing Chinese, the Manchus, in 1793 introduced in Tibet, but then it was rarely used. And when it was used in the last century, in 1995, in the case of Panchen Lama that you mentioned, one young boy of 6 years old was recognized by His Holiness in 1995 as the 11th Panchen Lama, after the demise of the 10th Panchen Lama in 1989 under very suspicious circumstances. So for those who don't know, in Chinese government selected another boy as their Panchen Lama, and the golden urn was used, and it was misused by the authorities to select the boy that they wanted to select. So it's all in the book written by Arya Rinpoche, who was a witness at that time. So this is another argument from the Chinese side, that the golden urn should be used. So there are many layers of understanding the reincarnation process. It's not necessary that you need one particular Lama to recognize the another one.
Can you please take us through the process of celebrations? And on the 6th, you have told us between 2nd and 4th, the engagements of the Dalai Lama. What are the plans for the 6th? Any names of important dignitaries from India or across the world who will be coming to seek his blessings?
Now, we have decided to celebrate His Holiness' 90th birthday throughout the year, between 25 to 26 July, as the year of compassion, which is very much rooted in the ancient Indian wisdom. So, and which is very relevant today. As we speak, we are speaking about more escalation of violence all around the world. So the message of non-violence, compassion, that's rooted in Indian ancient wisdom is very, very relevant today, and which is very, very needed today. So because of that, we are not able to, or we have not invited all the people that we wanted to invite. Of course, his friends, His Holiness friendship with so many people around this world, it's not possible to get even a part of them to come to Dharamsala. So besides the programs that I told you, from 2nd to 4th, we have the religious conference, and then on the 5th, we have the long life prayer offering, and on the 6th, we have a central minister from the government of India, two state chief ministers, and then also a home minister from Karnataka. So these are some of the states where majority of the Tibetans live, and there will also be representation from Ladakh, but we have purposely not invited the Honorable Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh, because the sitting capacity in front of His Holiness residence is not very big, and this is rainy season, so we can't do it in open space where we can have bigger space to utilize, but unfortunately it's rainy season. So whatever space we have in front of His Holiness residence, we are using it to the maximum. So besides the guests I've mentioned, we also have some members of Parliament, Indian Parliament coming, members of Parliament who came on their own from some 6, 7 different countries. And then, of course, some more friends as well. So from the US, there may be some representation. Yes, so these are but since we are celebrating the whole year as Year of Compassion, so we have different dates to invite different guests. Even now, we are still working on many parliamentary delegations to come from different countries to Dharamsala to wish His Holiness personally, and maybe if occasion provides for, to attend some of the public functions.
Coming to the question of Tibetans in exile in India, Karnataka, and I'm from Bangalore, Karnataka had the largest Tibetan settlements, but what I'm given to understand is that many people, especially the young, are migrating, are moving to other countries. So how do you perceive that? How do you perceive on one level is the dilution of the concentration of the diaspora in one country, the host country, to the other countries? Does it help the cause of the Tibetans vis-a-vis the aspirations of the young?
Now, just as so much of demographic and social changes are happening in every parts of the world, the Tibetan community who have been in exile for the last 65 years is no exception to these changes. So many, as you say, many young Tibetans are moving out. So just to give you an overall picture, the Tibetan population inside Tibet is estimated at 7.3 or 7.8 million today, based on the 2020 census of the Chinese government. But still, the numbers are not very clear to bring about a lot of clarity in the divisions of things that we want to see. But overall, it's estimated to be around that number. Now in exile, we are only about 130 to 140,000 Tibetans. And out of that, 70,000 are in India, about 8,300 in Nepal, and the rest are spread across the world in some more than 27 different countries. So younger people moving out definitely impacts the vibrancy of our compact communities here in India, particularly in Karnataka state. That has some of the bigger Tibetan compact communities. That is why we, just as every community faces new challenges, we are also facing the same. So we face this challenge of dispersing communities. And then also over the last 30, 40 years, we have Tibetans coming out of Tibet who own nothing. So we have started programs that can complement, become one challenge could be solution to another challenge, but of course that involves raising resources to fulfill the same. So we are embarking on those issues, take the opportunities also handle the challenges as it comes. So you mentioned about one of the challenges, of course, when you have most of the younger generations moving out, the age group that can bear children, have productive labor, then it also has its cyclical impact on the community. When you have less number of children coming from Tibet these days, people migrating out of here, take their children with them, then you also see the impact on the school system. So all these we are watching, we are looking at numbers, and that develop policies and programs to see how we need to move forward in handling this in the long term, to also make sure that the vibrancy of these communities maintained for the long-term sustainability of the Tibetan movement itself. So
you travel extensively.
Yeah.
You travel quite a bit. So what are the voices that you hear from the diaspora? What is their aspiration? Is there a sense of statelessness? Is there, the Dalai Lama has always espoused the middle approach, which is greater autonomy to Tibet, which focuses the cultural identity, the socio-cultural identity, to retain that. But what is the aspiration of the young?
No, it's very difficult to generalize and say this is the aspiration of the young. Of course, I've been traveling quite a lot, and I'm meeting with all the community members. My promise to my community is that I will visit them 2 times in 5 years, which now I'm about to finish the second round. Before the end of next month, I should be able to finish my second round. So we have to work doubly hard because His Holiness is, as we discussed, His Holiness is going to be 90, and His Holiness does not travel as much as he used to before. So the responsibility lies on us to keep our flock together, despite the fact that we are getting physically distant from each other, but to keep ourselves emotionally close. So fortunately for us, under the leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama, wherever there is a sizable number of Tibetans have formed Tibetan associations in that area. And the associations take responsibility for keeping the community intact with the Office of Tibet in that region. So we have only about 12 offices of Tibet. So, and I particularly spend time to meet with the young Tibetans, because we always have to find ways how to take everybody along. So you mentioned about the middle way policy. For those who don't know about this, so for those who are not aware of what the policy of the Tibetans in exile are to resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict or dispute, His Holiness has for several decades have been proposing the middle way policy. So middle way, when His Holiness says middle way, then we are also talking about polarities or ends. Without ends or polarities, they cannot be middle. And in the political sense, middle way is trying to find genuine autonomy, not just only in name, because right now China calls Tibet region as Tibet Autonomous Region, prefectures and all that, but there's no real autonomy there. So a genuine autonomy between the polarities of, on the one hand, the historical status of Tibet as an independent state, and on the other hand, the current situation of Tibet, occupied Tibet under the repressive Chinese government, the communist government. So this is what we mean by a middle way, where the Tibetan people who were historically independent are now not seeking separation from China, but are willing to live within the framework of Chinese constitution, but should have the autonomy to retain, to preserve, promote every part of their identity. So that is what this whole concept is all about. So what we try to do, of course, within the Tibetan community, you have the proponents of independence. Then, of course, the official policy is the middle way. So my cabinet, the 16th cabinet, we devised a strategy under the same policy to focus on the polarities, to gain recognition to the polarities from the international community so that there would be there could be value for middle way. If there is no recognition for the polarities, the historical status of Tibet as an independent state, and the present situation we keep talking about all the time to the international community wherever we go and advocate. But the historical status is not mean. Even within India, not many people know about Tibet's history. Right. So one of the reasons is to send a clear message to the Chinese government that you cannot distort history, including Tibetan history, because China is used to doing this all across the board, not just with Tibet, but even with India on Arunachal Pradesh and South China Sea, with Japan, with Taiwan, everywhere. So that is one thing. And the second thing is to send a message to the international community that please study Tibetan history. You cannot measure everything as per today's international law. What happened in Asia centuries ago has to be measured according to the historical realities of those times and then bring it to today's reality. So then again, saying on the one hand, Tibet is part of PRC, all the time at the behest of the Chinese government, and on the other hand saying, oh, we appreciate negotiations between representative of His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Chinese government, does not go together. It contradicts each other. And they're removing the very ground for negotiation. When every country keeps saying Tibet is part of PRC, then where is the reason for China to come and talk to us? Then I also say, why is Chinese government asking every other government to say that Tibet is part of PRC? Does that happen with every other country? I don't know. United States, UK, is UK asking every other country to say Gibraltar is part of their territory? It's not happening. Even within China, there's no mention of East Turkestan or Mongolia or Manchuria. But why only Tibet? That's because Chinese government knows that they have no legitimacy of their rule in Tibet. And they're trying to seek that legitimacy from the international community. Right? And when the whole international community repeats that, they're not neutral. And they don't even study Tibetan history, right? And then the third reason is for the Tibetans themselves. If Tibetans don't study Tibetan history, who else will? And without understanding your past, how will you fight for your future? So these are some of the important things. And the fourth reason why we adopted this strategy is, again, the division between the Tibetan community going for independence or middle way, right? So now, as on the official position of middle way, when we are focusing on the polarities, particularly the historical part, then even independence proponents, if they are seeking independence for future, they have to seek support of as many international communities as possible about the historical past of Tibet. So we are on the same path to some extent. And after some time, what will evolve will depend on what is happening, because right now, as we speak, so many things are happening around this world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was about to ask you that in a world which is torn by conflicts and wars, with the threat of the big powers getting into it, the cause of Tibet, do you think, is losing ground because there is no space for dialogue? Do you think so?
Now, at this peak of violence, let's hope that it does not go beyond this, because there are so many conflict zones, new conflict zones arising, which is taking all the attention and money and so much destruction of life and properties. Whereas in some parts of the world, we are not able to build schools. In some parts of the world, whatever is built is being destroyed, unfortunately. And we see with our own eyes every single day. Now, the relevance or irrelevance will depend on how the world views conflicts that needs to be resolved. The conflicts that are happening, the violent conflicts that are happening around us today, is it really resolving one problem, or are you creating more causes for future problems? That is something that we need to ponder about, irrespective of who is to blame, who started for what. So, of course, all this will keep happening. And then if both sides remain egocentric, then there will be no resolution, in a sense, apart from having more and more war, violence, killing, create so much pain for humanity and concern for the rest of the world. That is not the way forward. The only way forward is nonviolence as a means to resolve conflicts. That is why Tibetans, relevance of Tibetans come into the picture, because Tibetans today are a unique example of nonviolent struggle led by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people. So sometimes I joke saying funding or supporting non-violence is cheaper. It comes in millions. Then if you have to support violence, then it goes into billions on whichever side you are. That's why the relevance on that part, from that sense, I think Tibet still remains very relevant as a pioneer or as an example to resolve conflicts non-violently. Then the other thing is whether Tibet exists in the global discourses or not. Now, as you said, I've been traveling a lot, and I have worked with the central administration for many years, as a member of parliament, as speaker, now as Sikyong, or the democratically elected political leader. And I have seen the changes that are happening. Earlier, of course, we travel, we meet with as many political leaders as possible. We try to explain to them what is happening inside Tibet, what China's motivations are. Now, there is more interest from countries to understand more about China. And we understand more about China than Europeans or Latinos or North Americans, except for, of course, think tanks, and people want to understand China more. So Tibet is naturally involved in that process. That is why the relevance of Tibet also exists, because if countries want to deal with China, they need to understand China better, and we are one component of that who understand better than many others.
What has been the support of
And
India?
Just 1 second, and not to forget the geopolitical importance of Tibet, and then the environmental.
Absolutely. How do you see the support coming from the government of India?
No, I have always said, if it is not for the government of India, we don't exist. So I think that line itself underlines where government of India stands in terms of Tibet. And I have always also said the same thing, that if the government of India still has not changed the name from Indo-Tibetan Border Police or Indo-Tibetan Border Force, it still remains the same as before 1959, 1951, 50. So that underlines. So now, how explicit the government India needs to be in their position on Tibet, that is up to the government of India. I'm in no position to advise the government of India. Of course, everybody would love government of India to be more vocal, but I've always said we have a very transparent relationship with the government of India, and if it is not for the government and people of India, we don't exist. So we remain forever grateful. But at the same time, wherever we need to press upon certain issues, we do that. But it's up to the government of India to decide what they want to do.
What happened to the Resolve Tibet Act, which was passed and was awaiting the presidential assent? Now, the post the change in the administration and the new president. So where does that bill stand now?
The Resolve Tibet Act, which talks about Tibet, it has already become a law signed by President Biden on July 12th last year, 2024. So it's a law in the United States, unless it's reversed, or if there is a sunset clause or something of that sort. So as of today, it's a law in the United States that Tibet is yet to be yet to be resolved conflict. So it's an unresolved conflict, and it needs to be resolved under international law. The law also says that Tibetan people have the right to self-determination, in following in the steps of 1961 UN resolution on Tibet. And then the law also says that the US government does not accept China's disinformation on Tibetan history, saying that Tibet has been part of China since ancient times. And the law also talks about the territory of Tibet, not just Tibet Autonomous Region, but all the 3 provinces of Tibet. So the law still remains in place. Even with the new administration, new administration in President Trump's first term, also he was the one who signed the amendment to the 2002 Tibet Policy Act, which became Tibet Support and Policy Act of 2020. That was also signed into law by President Trump. So fortunately, we do have very good bipartisan support in the United States. And now, as we speak, two new bills have been introduced. One on His Holiness 90th birthday, and another on matters relating to self-determination for Tibetan people and other elements. So US is pretty consistent on political support for Tibet, but if you are referring to the cut in foreign assistance, USAID, then I would like to believe that we became collateral damage in the process, and we are still working with the administration. I was there in Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks from April end to May beginning, and we are meeting all this. We have met all the stakeholders. And even here in the region also, we met the office officials and officers. We were given to understand that the revision is still ongoing. If you look at all the developments where President Biden on some of the funding issues which needs U.S. Congress, which had U.S. congressional mandate, and to do away with that, again, the Congress has to do away with that. So he's trying to seek exemption from the Congress on the projects that he wants to scrap, but that in those, except for Radio Free Asia and Voice of America, all our other projects are not included on those. So we are hopeful of being able to restore this funding back, but till it is back on paper, I would not say it's a success. We did had good meetings.
My 2 last questions to you. One is that there was an attempt of drawing the map of Tibet in the language of Tibet and not, the Sinicized names that China has given. So how far has that gone?
No, of course, Chinese government decided to call Tibet Autonomous Region as Xizang. Of course, they have been calling Tibet as Xizang. And at this time, Xizang is whole of Tibet. Now, the perspective or the understanding or what is being defined from the Communist Party is that if you call Tibet Xizang, which is Chinese name for Tibet, then that connotes only Tibet Autonomous Region. When you say Tibet, then it includes all the 3 provinces of Tibet. That is how they are trying to interpret it. So that is why the change of name to popularly use only as Xizang also includes a lot more ramifications than just changing the name or removing the very background of the name Tibet, or make it not possible for the world to hear Tibet again. Those are there, but it has larger ramifications of what Tibet constitutes. So it's just part of one part of the cartographic aggression that the Chinese government is doing in this region. It's not just with changing the name of Tibet into Xizang. They have done with East Turkestan to Xinjiang. With Japan, the disputed islands, Japanese call it Senkaku and Chinese call it Daewoo. So Chinese never call Senkaku, they call it Daewoo. So it's happening all around the South China Sea where China claims it's part of their territory, and they they want to use only Chinese name for those territories. And you have seen Chinese efforts at renaming places in Arunachal Pradesh as well.
And my last but a little difficult question is, in the unfortunate event that Dalai Lama passes away, is there a blue book on the interim period between this event to the reincarnation?
Now, in terms of political and administrative responsibilities, His Holiness made it very clear that he devolved all those responsibilities. His Holiness continues to, of course, we continue to seek his advice on all important matters. But His Holiness prepared us. He knows these realities. It's very much every day he is aware of his existence as a Buddhist monk. He keeps preaching and teaching about all this. So His Holiness has been a visionary in many senses. You know, when we first came into exile in 1959, we never thought that we'll have to live in exile for that long, because the 13th Dalai Lama also went back from India in 2 years' time, you know, after having to come into exile in 1910. So very early, not even 1 year after coming into exile, His Holiness introduced democracy. So for the last 65 years, we have been experimenting, learning, relearning, and that is why today Tibetans are the only ones in exile that has a fully functional democratic polity, you know, in India, and then our system of management all around the world. So because of that, even ordinary person like me today could become Sikyong. So I think what one needs to understand is that even under these very sad circumstances, whenever that comes, in 2 decades' time, the Tibetans have been empowered to administer themselves, to advocate themselves. That is why even during my tenure here, which I'm in my 5th year last year, what we have been attempting is not just take care of the immediate needs or political or the welfare needs of the Tibetans in exile, but also look into the long term. You know, so we are preparing ahead as to how we need to. So it will all depend on how united the Tibetans will be and how effective the leadership of the Central Tibetan Administration would be at that time in future when such an eventuality happens. And I'm sure Tibetans will live up to that expectation.
Thank you very much for your time, and our warmest wishes and regards for his good health to His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Thank you, Bala.
Thank you very much for your time.